Hello and welcome to another edition of Kirklees Local Television's Weekly Wind-Up, the programme that brings important issues to you, the people of Kirklees. As always, I'm Kyle Warwick, and joining me on this week's show are Donna Marie, a PhD student from the University of Huddersfield. Hello Donna. Also joining us is Oliver Smith, a Huddersfield-based artist and blogger.
Hi.
And joining us as well is Dr. Bernice Golding, a lecturer in social sciences from the Division of Criminology, Politics and Sociology in the School of Human and Health Sciences at the University of Huddersfield. Welcome, Doctor. This week we have a number of interesting and pertinent topics for our guests to discuss. Firstly, we'll look at organ donation. The need for organ donation is always rising, yet some people may have worries about donating their organs, even if their bodies are in a state that they no longer need them. Then we'll look at the government's ability to push through emergency laws without proper vetting and parliamentary procedure. Is this right? And how does this benefit the people of the country? And finally, we'll look at a recent case of a blogger fined for a negative review of a restaurant. How will this affect people's use of the internet? And what does it mean for the future of internet commentary? So we go straight into the subject of organ donation. There are perhaps many myths about organ donation, some to do with religious beliefs and others to do with the kind of care that you may receive in life-threatening situations. There are also some people who may suggest that it should be mandatory for everyone to be part of the organ donor register. I'll come to you first, Dr. Bernice. Do you think it should be a matter of choice for people to be on the organ donor registration list?
Yeah, I do think that, with all respects, that it is about our choices and whether we actually decide that we want to be part of the organ donation register. I think there's a fair argument for mandatory enrolment, but really I think it's more to do with our personal choices and being able to express those personal choices as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that something you agree with, Oliver?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Even though I'm not an organ donor, I think that everybody should be. And I'd say, yeah, it shouldn't be mandatory, but maybe just more education about signing up.
Right. How do you feel we could maybe educate people a bit better, Donna, in terms of there's certain myths about maybe if you were an organ donor and you yourself were in a life-threatening situation, then you might receive lesser care because you are an organ donor and those organs can be passed on. How do you think we could go about dispelling these kind of myths?
Certainly, historically we would have cases that work and cases that don't work. So the education route would be useful so people could see, look at both cases. How will it work, or can it work, or if it doesn't work, what can happen? People need to be educated. From a personal standpoint, religiously, I definitely don't agree with organ donation. But certainly, if there are ways, if it helps other people, why not? But for me, I wouldn't support. But the education route, I think, could work. More education.
Is that something you agree with, Doctor?
I think in terms of this myth about people getting lesser treatment, we've got to be mindful of the fact that healthcare professionals have a responsibility for us as individuals, and it's about their duty of care to us, and that comes before the organs. So it's about looking after the care of the patient whilst they are here, and it's not about speeding that along. It would be unethical for them to actually start to withdraw their treatment from us because we were on the organ register. And I think we need to remember that the duty of care first is to that person that needs the care. What happens afterwards is another set of issues.
Absolutely. There are some people out there who say that if you aren't willing to donate an organ, then you should be excluded from the possibility of receiving an organ. Do you think this is a fair point of view, Oliver?
No, I think that's rubbish because not everybody knows about it. It's not as if it's a thing that's pushed in school or after school. So to say that somebody, because they didn't sign up, then is left to die, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Is that something you agree with?
And I mean, you could look at, say, somebody who is a smoker, yeah, and whose organ might be damaged because of their smoking habit. Why should somebody who has never smoked or has never lived any life vicariously have the good organs and don't believe in giving the organ? Why should they be, because they didn't want to give don't want to sign up, then they should be punished? No, I think it should be that if you want to give it, you give it. If you don't want to, it's your choice.
Well, what do you think about the case you mentioned there, smoking? Somebody who has damaged their body through their own actions, so somebody maybe who has damaged the liver through alcohol, or somebody who's damaged the lungs through smoking. Should they be entitled to take an organ from somebody who's healthy, do you think?
I think these are quite big moral debates that we're having, and there are a lot of issues around, in a sense, blaming individuals, because I think we can run the risk of doing that because people have a particular lifestyle, and to say actually you wouldn't qualify for this because it's your fault, I personally think is wrong. Yeah. And it becomes quite a difficult situation that we're dealing with in society. Yeah. If it's about looking after that person, if it's about helping them to maybe make safer lifestyle choices going forward in the future, why shouldn't they have that chance? I don't think that we have a right to say no, because you did X, Y, and Z, but that's just a personal opinion. I think the issue around as well, you have to be willing to give if to receive, is again a bit problematic, because we're talking about what essentially is a gift relationship. We are giving because we're wanting to help other people. And it's based on altruism, it's based on that genuine desire to help someone else. And I don't think we should be saying, well, actually, if you're not willing to give, then you shouldn't be on the receiving end of that. We don't know, do we, until we're put in that situation, what we're going to feel like.
Absolutely.
If it comes to ourselves or our loved ones that we're making these decisions for. There's some big moral issues and some big ethical debates. So yeah, I mean, that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I could see you nodding along there, Oliver. Is that something that you agree with?
Yeah, definitely. And I just think if you start saying, well, because they smoked, they get knocked down the list, it's like, what? So you've got to put on certain levels of who qualifies more than the next person. And I think just anybody who's sick deserves treatment, so whatever treatment they can be given, regardless of what they've done in the past.
Absolutely. Is that something you agree with, Donna?
Yeah, just to pick up on what you were saying, if somebody lives vicariously, like a smoker or a drinker, people will say, why should I give my lungs to them, or my organ, or whatever? But it comes down to education, but also people's personal choice. So if somebody says, I don't want to give, I think that's fine. And so if somebody says, I'll give, that's also fine. Yeah?
Absolutely. Well, this has certainly been an interesting discussion. And if you so feel, you can find out more information on organdonation.nhs.uk. We would also like you to give us your opinions on this subject. You can contact us by email, info@kirkleeslocaltv.com, and on our Twitter page, search @theweeklywindup. Join us after this short break. Thank you. And welcome back. Joining me this week, Donna Marie, PhD student, Oliver Smith, a Huddersfield-based artist and blogger, and Dr. Bernice Campbell, a lecturer at the University of Huddersfield. Now we're going to move straight on to the topic of emergency laws. 15th of July saw the voting in of an emergency law giving security services access to people's home phone and internet records. Some MPs have argued that the bill only reinstated powers that the government had lost by the repeal of laws through the European Court of Justice. Yet many MPs are angered by the way that the bill has been rushed through. How do we feel about this? Do you feel that the government should be allowed to push through laws as they argue in times of necessity? Doctor?
Yeah, I think this is quite a contentious topic, because if we consider that the government are actually pushing through the emergency laws in the best interest of us all, then yeah, perhaps it's okay. And maybe that's acceptable, because essentially what the government do is designed to look after us, the populace, and protect our best interests. But it does seem like a bit of an infringement on our liberties. And because it's rushed through, it makes you wonder why it's being rushed through so quickly. Whose best interests are they actually trying to protect? Is it ours, or is it someone else? And I think for me, one of the problems is that we're not told enough about this until it's happened, or we hear because we see an online petition saying, did you know that this was happening? And we may then all start to respond and go, no, we didn't actually. Yeah. So I think the issue is possibly not that they're rushing them through so quickly, it's just that they don't tell us about them, so we actually don't know what's happening. And for me, it makes me wonder, are they looking after me? They need to look after us, but are they really doing it for the right reason? Is it about preventing terrorism, or is it about something else?
Yeah. I mean, there are some people that would say that because it's been rushed through, it hasn't been properly vetted, and it hasn't given the public the opportunity to see the different things that make up the law that has been pushed through. Is that something that worries you, Oliver?
Definitely. I mean, I just think if you're going to be rushing laws through, it should be when the country's in a state of emergency or war or some massive event where they need to push through. But when they wrap some law within another law in a document this thick and rush it through at 6 a.m, when there's nobody in Parliament, I mean, I think that's just sneaky, and it seems to me a lot of it is more around commercial interests and not the people of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that something you agree with, Donna?
I'm just looking here, it says security services. Is this in response to the heightened terrorism frenzy, fright that people, is that why the laws are rushed? Because then if you're going to give people access to people's phone and internet record, Joe Blogs, me, you, we are all Joe Blogs. We're not into any terrorism thing. Is it going to be specifically targeted at the people who are suspected terrorists or anybody? So if I'm having an affair, can they find my records to tell my husband, oh, your wife is having an affair? Exactly what are these laws for? Who is it going to protect or safeguard us against? That's a question we need to know.
I mean, Theresa May has argued that the bill was necessary for the safety of the British people. This was an argument that the US government used pushing through the Patriot Act after 9/11, and after the Patriot Act was pushed through, it became clear that there was a lot of extra bits to the laws that affected a lot of people on the ground in America. I suppose the question is, does this represent a move towards a more autocratic type of government? A more, dictatorial is the wrong word, but or maybe a bit too strong, but autocratic government as opposed to true democracy. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
I think it's interesting there, Kyle, that you use the very word that I'm going to use, that this whole idea of a dictatorship, because essentially that's where we're taking ourselves. When we start to think autocracy, we're talking to some extent about dictatorships, and without names, beginning to name names and, pointing to certain countries, it's probably better not to. Yeah. I think we have to also remind ourselves of some of the atrocities that are associated with those styles of leadership. And remember that we actually do live in a democracy. It's just how that manifests itself is quite different, because a lot of the time it feels like we're being told what to do rather than having a voice and making our voice heard. And I think one of the issues is that actually when we're given an opportunity to make our voices heard, how many of us actually go out and register our vote? And I think that's where true democracy, we need to be fully engaging with what's happening, because we run the risk, we all complain about a nanny state, being told what to do. It's not as bad as what it could be, and I think, the government is supposed to be doing this, but we have a voice in that as well. And I think the more of us make a voice, or make our voices heard, the more we'll feel like we live in a democracy.
Absolutely. Is that something you agree with, Bob?
Yeah, a couple of points. I would agree with that, but then also I think the government's quite good at ignoring like masses of people protesting and on the streets against things they don't want to happen. They still pass the laws. And then also stuff like data collection. We're notoriously bad at losing data, and I just think giving them more and more personal data about people who aren't criminals, like you say, why do they need to know this? I mean, it should be much more targeted and not just collecting information on the general public, which is really personal and invasion of privacy. And then other laws like that, they're just slowly eroding our rights.
Do you agree, Donna?
Could I be devil's advocate here? Yeah, we all sit here and think, yeah, the government is infringing on our rights, but should something happen and then these laws are not in place, we are the same ones who will say, why was nothing done? So there are two sides. There's a reason and a need for it, but also it should be targeted, as you say, and not just collecting data, because again, you mentioned losing. I remember somebody losing some information on a train, so kind of thing. So it shouldn't be just collecting because for a reason, just to collect. It should be if you know of a person or groups who are probably going to cause any harm, then they should be targeted and not just us. So, if, as I said, if I'm being devil's advocate, we all will still say, if something goes wrong, why did we not have these systems in place?
Oliver?
Yeah, I think that all this talk about terrorism and stuff, and really, to me, terrorism is not a major issue and not something that we should be giving up our privacy for, because it's such a minority effect on the population. And then also, like in America, there's been stuff to do with tapping phones, and then the judges who ordered it have shares within the phone company and stuff, and that kind of thing doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Right, we're going to move straight on now to the news that a blogger has been fined in the European courts after posting a negative review of a restaurant on the internet. Whilst this may not exactly seem like local news, there may well be ramifications for people in the area, as there are many bloggers who post reviews about pubs and restaurants, and as well it may have ramifications for people's ability to express their freedom of speech. I'll come to you first, Oliver, as a blogger. Do you feel it's right that people can be fined for making their opinions known?
No, I think it's total invasion of free speech, and it just sets a precedent for people being worried about what they can say, whether it be online or wherever, and no, very bad news.
Do you feel that it's right that people should be allowed to let it be known when they've received bad service, Doctor?
Oh, definitely. I think we're all well within our rights to share the bad and the good. And I think one of the problems we have nowadays, and I'm going to show my age a little bit here, is saying once upon a time when we complained, we used to pop a letter in the post. It was private. And I think what we're seeing now is the upsurge in social media. People are blogging, people are on Twitter, Facebook, and letting their views be known. Yeah. If those are positive, everyone's happy. But when the negative people get a little bit upset, if I want to post something negative, I want to be able to do that, not thinking I'm going to end up in court. You know, we're talking about setting a precedent here. It can become a concern. Do we dare say this in public? What will happen to us if we do? So I think we're facing a change in the way we deal with negative reviews as well. But I think they're useful. You know, I go on holiday, I look at negative reviews. I look at the positives as well.
Absolutely.
It's a balance.
You've actually come to the point I was going to make, because a lot of companies actually encourage people to go on and say what you think, like a TripAdvisor. There's the companies they want to hear. So I'm just thinking, it's either that the person who blogged must have said something really, really bad, or this company has been really, really thrived.
It was mentioned by the judge that it was the sort of prevalence on Google when you typed in for the review. It was the fact that her blog appeared fourth on the list of reviews. So it was the the prevalence of it, that the judge deemed it worthy of fining the lady, the person who made the comments. Oliver, coming back to yourself, you blog and write a blog regularly. Do you think this will affect the way that you think about the things that you put onto your blog?
Well, it makes me quite angry, but I don't think so, because my blog is about pushing young creative people. I tend to not review things which I know I'm going to give a bad review to, because it's not really about that. But I think the point you raised about the blogger being punished for Google ranking is just ridiculous. I mean, because they're successful, they're not allowed to say bad things. And then I can see the point, if you're going to make bad reviews and you're going to go around painting the town with bad reviews and above and beyond, I think maybe there is, there's harassment or whatever it would be deemed. That's fair enough, but to give your opinion on an open forum and then be fined and in court for it is absolutely ridiculous.
Right, I'm afraid that is all we've got time for today. Thank you very much to all my guests. It's been an extremely interesting discussion. Once again, you can contact us with your opinions on any of these topics. Don't worry, you will not end up in court for doing so. You can reach us by email on info@kirkleeslocaltv.com, and you can also find us on Twitter by searching @The Weekly Windup. Please join us again next week for another interesting debate here at Kirklees Local Television. Thank you and goodbye.